If you're thinking about buying the CRF 300L, then you're going to want to stay tuned for this video, and you'll get to see whether you should be buying this little ripper or not. Woo! Who says it's got no power? So the first point I'd make about the CRF 300L, yep, it's 286cc, and I'll talk about the power. So obviously we know what we're getting, right? It's under 300cc bike. It is not going to blow your mind in terms of power, acceleration, anything like that. But for anyone who isn't looking for adrenaline rush, thrills and spills on the road, sort of high speed acceleration and things like that, this bike does have plenty of power for everything but motorway, freeway riding. Although it's not a huge amount of power more than the 250L, which I also owned, you'll actually find that the power, the little bit, the 36cc extra of power does make a difference. And that combined with the better gearing on this bike, so they've shortened up the gearing, it really does make the power that it's got more usable. So you find that you're not having to shift gears as much. It's got a little bit more grunt, and it will keep pulling, so it's not so anemic at the top end. If you do the type of riding that I do, which is more sort of trails, a little bit of roads to get to the trails and stuff, back roads, not freeway, not expressway, motorway, but just getting to the trails. Hey. And then you go on the trails and you go adventure, touring, proper adventures, then the power on this bike is plenty. Fourth gear basically will take you from everything from 30 kilometers an hour all the way up to over 100 kilometers an hour. So I'll just show you here up the hills. Look, this is going to be quite a steep incline. We're in third, we're only at 50 kilometers an hour. I'll drop it into, knock it into fourth, and it has got plenty to rip. We will get onto a fairly steep incline in a second, and it's got more than enough power to pull you up this hill. We're up over 100. Fifth gear, still pulling. Whee, and then we just got to watch out for dogs in the road because we're early. Woo! The thing that you're going to want to know is about the suspension. No doubt if you've been researching this bike, everyone will talk about the suspension. You'll have seen that mentioned a lot of times. You're going to hear a lot of people online telling you you need to upgrade the suspension on this bike. And I own both this and the Rally. Now if you're talking about the Rally, I'd agree, you need to upgrade the suspension. It's very, very bouncy. The 300L, I think a lot of people could get away with the stock suspension, and here's the reason why. This bike is aimed at beginners, right? It's aimed at beginners, but also it's perfect for people like me. I'm 42, and people who are a little bit older who just want to get out riding. Maybe they haven't done loads of off-roading before. They like the fact that they can go anywhere on this bike pretty much, but they're not going to be hitting huge whoops. They're not going to be sort of trying to do hard enduro or motocross on the bike. They're going to be doing stuff here like this. It's rough, it's a dirt track, but the stock suspension can handle it pretty decently unless you are absolutely ripping. So if you're riding a lot quicker than me, or a lot rougher stuff than me, or you're a lot heavier than me, I'm 85 kilos, then the stock suspension surprisingly is quite a bit firmer than it feels on the Rally. And so yeah, I've upgraded the Rally suspension with a Rally Raid unit. I do have upgraded suspension for this bike, and I haven't felt the need to put it on yet. So the suspension is a weak point, but it is a budget bike, and you're not going to get full-on suspension for this for the price that you're paying. And so yeah, a lot of people will tell you you've got to upgrade the suspension. I wouldn't tell you that on the 300L. I would say take a look at it, ride it, see how it does for you. Are you bottoming it out? Is it causing you actual problems, or is it just everyone saying, oh, you need to upgrade this? Yeah, and try to save you a bit of money. That's what I'd tell my friends. Wow, what's going on here? This has changed. That's what I tell my friends, and in fact I did tell my friend Vince, is, you know, the bike even in stock form is pretty good, and the suspension for me is perfectly manageable. The Carabao does not like the Yoshimura. This bike is so reliable. It's obviously a very similar engine to the 250L. There's tons of examples of the 250L traveling all the way around the world, getting over 100,000 miles on these engines, and this is basically the same engine, and it's incredibly easy to maintain. So here in the Philippines, and it's most likely the same in a lot of third world countries, if you're going to go and adventure, all the local Honda mechanics, so we have a lot of little Honda branches in all the little barangays, the little towns and villages. Almost all of those mechanics can work on this bike. So if I have an issue, it's a 10-minute drive, and I've just got to nip to the nearest barangay, and they'll be able to sort out most issues. Whereas if I go up to something like a CB500X or any of what they call the bigger bikes here, I'm looking at a trip into Cebu City, which is a 2-hour trip up there, 2 hours back, or the same down to Dumaguete. I've got to go into a main dealer because the mechanics at the main dealers are qualified to work on big bikes, which for this purpose is anything sort of CB500X and up, whereas the 300L, pretty much all the mechanics can work on it. It's a pretty basic bike, and actually, if you look at it, because it's so open, it's actually really easy to work on yourself. So I'm not a mechanically minded guy particularly. I can turn my hand to most things, but I'm not practiced at it, right? I don't really touch the other bikes, or I haven't done, but this one I do. This one is so easy to access. You can just see where everything is. That makes it really, really simple to work on. So for instance, an oil change on this is it's a piece of cake. It's the bolt underneath, obviously the drain bolt, and then the oil filter on this side is really easy to access. No special tools required, no oil filter wrenches or any of that pain where you got the oil filter at the front. It's a simple unbolting here of 4 bolts and a quick slip-in replacement on the oil filter. Air filter change, again, this panel off. It's a like for like, just a plug and play, pull it out, air filter change, dead simple. And then going on to my next point, the third party support for this bike is fantastic. So in stock form, this bike is really, really good, and if you didn't want to change it at all from stock, then I wouldn't blame you. It's perfectly capable in its stock form. If, like me, you want to do some stuff on it, rather than having to spend thousands of pounds or dollars paying labor for guys to, for the garage to fix it up for you, you've got tons and tons of third-party support, and you can do it yourself because it's so simple. So just as a quick run round on this bike, I'm not going to tell you everything, but you can see that I've changed the bars out. You can see that I've changed the exhaust system out, and all of those processes are really easy to do. Adding a skid plate, obviously super easy. I pulled out the rear fender myself, and I've put on a little tail tidy, and I changed the air filter. I changed the air filter lid, and then I also changed the ECU unit, swapped out the ECU for a 550 performance. And again, access is simple. Panel off here, pull the little radiator tank out, and then the ECU is in behind there, and it's just a clip out, clip in thing. Super easy to maintain, and brilliant third party support. And not only is there lots of third party support, but the parts are all cheaper. So the parts are cheaper than if you have a big bike or a bigger bike. So for example, on this, I paid $649 US for a full Yoshimura system, all the way from the header and all the way through to the muffler, and you ain't going to get that on a bigger bike. Your KTMs, your Husqvarnas, anything like that, the parts are going to be more expensive. This one, the parts are reasonably priced. So all in so far on this bike, if you want to check out how much I've actually spent on it, then check out this video. You'll want to see that, because I go through all the parts, how much I've spent, and how, whether it's worth spending the money on it. So do take a look at that video. It has a 7.8 litre tank, right? I'm averaging about 30 kilometers a litre. So you're looking at just over 200 kilometers for a full tank. And that does bother you sometimes if you want to go on more adventure style riding. So it is just something to be aware of. We'll take a look now quickly at, there we go, so kilometers per hour. So we got 37 kilometers an hour average, 29.9 kilometers per litre average at the moment. That's since I have changed out the ECU and everything and remapped it and all that stuff. So another thing to be aware of with the range is that the fuel gauge is not always accurate, so I tend to go by this, which is the amount of litres used, so 7.8, and I've used 5.5, but that's what I'd go by. That's more accurate, just a little tip there. But yeah, so the fuel range is good. You can get 200 kilometers out of it, but you are going to be thinking about fuel quite regularly with this bike. So if you are riding out to dirt tracks, you're probably going to be filling up your tank more than once in a day. It's just something to be aware of. Obviously, these type of bikes, it'd be ridiculous to put a huge fuel tank on it. But you can, if you want to, swap this out pretty easily for an Acerbis 13 litre, and I think you're looking at a couple of $100. So if you are wanting more range out of the bike, you could get the 13 litre Acerbis fuel tank, which obviously would extend that range considerably. Another thing to be aware of, so a slight negative point, but again, it doesn't really bother me that much, is a lot of heat gets kicked out on this right hand side of the bike. It's just because you've got a radiator fan blowing here, and the exhaust and the engine, all the heat combined gets into you. So in super hot weather, if you're going slow, you feel that heat. As soon as you get going, the wind picks up, clears it out, no problem. Hey, ride it like you stole it. That kind of brings me on to my next point, which is this bike is cheap. Now I know cheap is relative. So over here I paid $4,500 US for it roughly. I know in the UK it's a little bit more, it's like 5,500. But in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty cheap motorbike. And when you're looking at the cost of the bike as well, obviously, you're not just talking about what it costs to buy. Yeah, it's the rest of the stuff. So it's maintaining it. This is I've not rode this before because it's this is all new. So the cost of maintenance on this bike, again, everything. I was just back in the UK and I was amazed at how expensive everything's getting. And that will go for labour prices and servicing costs and parts and everything too. So the parts on this bike are cheap. It only takes 1.45 litres of oil for an oil and filter change. Oil changes are every 8,000 kilometers, so plenty of riding in between those oil changes and services. If you compare it to something like the CRF 450L, which has much shorter service intervals, this one can keep going a lot longer. And because it's so easy to work on, you can actually do that yourself and save the money on that as well if you want to. But even if you're paying labour charges, you're only looking at 1.45 litres of oil. As I say, I changed my Z900 out not so long ago, and I think it was 4 litres of premium oil put in that, which soon adds up. Oil filters are easily and readily available online in my case, but obviously at all the local garages, I would think, over in America and the UK. And it's a simple little tiny oil filter. So again, nice and cheap and cheerful. A bit of chain lube and you're laughing, really. That's about it. Yeah, if you want a bike to not break the bank but to have plenty of fun on, you can go anywhere. Look at the size, these are blooming turkeys. It's not Christmas yet, is it, mate? That's it, you tell me to get out of the way, you go. Yeah, if you want a bike and you want to ride it, not only is it cheap to buy, relatively of course, it's cheap to maintain. It's also very economical on gasoline, with getting an average of around 30 kilometers per litre. If you really want to cut costs, you can do the work yourself, which again saves a heck of a lot of money, doesn't it, on labour these days. Whoop, let's just pop that down there. And then of course the insurance costs. Being only a 286cc single cylinder sort of dual sport bike, the insurance companies don't charge an arm and a leg for it, and that just makes it accessible for everyone. It means that also, wow, this is overgrown now, what the heck, let's see if I can get up here. It makes it accessible for everyone, but not only that, when you ride it, just spin that out, when you ride it, you can ride it like it's cheap, because if you drop this, let's just think, if I drop this, might snap a lever, that's about a tenner to replace. The plastics, you can get all those from somewhere like Biker Bits or crfsonly.com, which is where I tend to buy stuff from, and you can replace all that fairly quickly, fairly easily. Let's see where this water spray is coming from. I'm not going to leak on my radiator, am I? So yeah, you're able to replace any broken parts, and also, I mean, just look at it. You're not going to break as many parts. The one thing you are going to break are these. They're crap. They're so sticking out. They already wobble. One drop on them and they're gone, aren't they? Really. Bonus tip: if you're my age and you want to feel 16 again, get a CRF 300L and put a pipe on it. So yeah, overall, who is this bike for? Because that's really what you want to know when you're asking me, or you're looking at the video trying to find out who this bike is for. Is it the right bike for you? Are you going to be disappointed with the power? Are you going to get bored of it and think, I want to upgrade to a KTM or something? Or honestly, this bike, so let me explain my background just very briefly. 42, been riding since I was 16, had a break in between, live in Southeast Asia for half the year, and the kind of riding I like to do, I used to do sports bikes and a lot of fairly rapid and illegal road riding, but now at my age I'm more into this kind of riding, going and seeing places, getting from A to B, but through scenic routes, not fast roads, and trails. I love the trails, I love adventure riding. I like to get on the bike and not really know where I'm going to end up that day, and a little bit of touring. And so this bike, I would say, it's a perfect beginner bike, really good beginner bike. Shall I go back the roadway, or yeah, I'll go back this way, I think. It's a really good beginner bike. The power on it is enough that I don't think you'll get bored, unless you are, super aggressive and a very skilled off-road rider. I don't think you'll get too bored. If you're commuting, okay, fair enough, you want more power, but it's a great bike for beginners. Everything on it is well built, and for a beginner bike, you want something that is a known commodity, right? You don't want to be worrying about reliability. You don't want to be worrying about twisting your throttle too much and causing yourself mayhem or an accident or something. And this bike fits the bill. It's got enough power that it'll keep you going along with traffic. If you're heading off on the A roads, for example, in the UK, that's why I've got motocross boots on, because a massive rock just hit my ankle. It will do everything. It's fantastic for beginners. But saying that, it's just as good for people my age, 40 plus. I know there's a lot of older guys, sort of 60 plus, 50 plus, who have this bike as well. And it's because we've got past that stage in life where you need to be either showing off or getting huge amounts of adrenaline just from riding fast. I challenge, road riders who ride fast inline fours or whatever, or the KTM Dukes. Try and ride one of these fast off-road. It's more fun than you'd think, and actually ripping around a little bike like this is just as fun as riding those big bikes, and you're going to be doing it at a lot safer speeds. So it's perfect for us older guys, middle-aged or slightly older, I think, that want a bike that's no hassle. It's not going to break the bank. The wife's not going to divorce you because you spent 20 grand on a GS. And you want to be able to just get out and ride, and riding and seeing stuff, going on the trails, a bit of adventure in your life to bring that interest back is exactly what this bike can do. So it's a great all-round bike, pretty much for everyone apart from speed junkies. I'd recommend it. So I had a friend here who wanted to see whether this was the bike to upgrade to from he actually had a smaller CC bike, and I'm just honest about the bike, the positive things, the pros and the cons, and the pros list outweighs the cons list by a large margin. It's like It's just such a fun little bike, you know. You can rip it round, you can, you know, do things on it that you probably wouldn't do on a, you know, a more expensive or a heavier bike. And it's, you know, it's not going to bother you with putting gasoline in. It's not hugely expensive to put gas in it or petrol, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to maintain. You're not going to regret it. It's the perfect bike. It's also a great second bike. So if you've got a pretty fast sports bike, or if you've got a you know, a big adventure bike for the longer distance stuff, then this one makes a lot of sense as a second bike, to you know, to accompany that bigger bike. Because if you want that power, you can boom, see? Oh, that took a hit then. That took a hit then, but the suspension, it all right. It bottomed out the front suspension, but not too bad. Yeah, if you've got a bigger bike, then this one is a perfect partner for it, because you can do stuff on this bike that you cannot do on your big bikes. So yeah, I'd almost say this bike's for everyone. It's just, it's superb. And unless you don't know what you're buying and you want more power, and for some reason you buy a 300cc because you can't read or something, I don't know, then I don't see anyone buying this bike and being disappointed. It's brilliant. If you're seriously considering buying this bike, then you're probably going to want to take a look at my video here, and you'll see the mods that I've done on this bike. Or you might want to check out this, which is a little adventure vlog that I did, taking the CRF 300L just up into some mountains near me in Cebu. Until next time, I'll leave you with that view. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.